Yesterday morning, a 27-year-old farmer from Chipping Norton climbed into a bright orange McLaren worth £25,000, put his 5-year-old son Oscar in the passenger seat, and drove to his own wedding. 3 years ago, he was delivering veg boxes and taking contracting jobs across Oxfordshire for rates that barely covered his fuel. Nobody expected this. Now he was heading to Merriscourt, a 500-acre estate just minutes from the farm where his life changed completely. Because this was never just a wedding. It was the final chapter of a story Britain had been watching without fully understanding what it really was. And by the end of this, the only question left is not how Kaleb Cooper got here. It is how so many people missed it for so long. Kaleb Cooper married Tia Wilkinson on Saturday, the 5th of July, 2026, in the same corner of Oxfordshire where he was born, raised, and built his life. Merriscourt sits just outside Chipping Norton. If you know that part of the Cotswolds, you already know why that matters. This was not some imported celebrity wedding. This was local, deeply local. Kaleb has spent almost his entire life within a few miles of these fields. He was born here. He learned to farm here. He met Tia here. He became famous here. And now he got married here. That is not an accident. That is a life that stayed rooted while everything around it changed. Before the ceremony, Kaleb was photographed leaving a local pub with his groomsmen, which honestly feels exactly right. Then he arrived at Diddley Squad in that orange McLaren, a 25,000-pound supercar, his son Oscar beside him. It was the kind of image that looks unreal until you remember who Kaleb Cooper actually is. Not a media creation, not a polished celebrity. A working farmer who happened to become one of the most recognizable faces in British television. And that is why the picture hit so hard. Because it did not look like someone pretending to belong. It looked like someone who had already earned the right. Tia wore a flowing white gown, a tiara, and a veil, carrying a bouquet of wildflowers. Kaleb wore a suit and a yellow tie. They stood in front of a tractor for photographs afterwards, which may be the most Kaleb Cooper thing in the entire story. It is not a pose. It is a summary. A tractor in the background. A wedding in the foreground. A life that never really left the farm, even after the fame arrived. Their Instagram post went up the next morning. Such an amazing day yesterday celebrating our wedding. We both had the most amazing day. Mr. and Mrs. Cooper. That was enough to send the story across the fan base in minutes. And no one was more impossible to miss than Jeremy Clarkson. He was there. So was Lisa Hogan. So were cast members from Clarkson's farm. So was Eddie Hall, the world's strongest man turned boxer, now part of the wider Diddley Squad orbit. But Clarkson did not just attend. He brought the drinks. Unlimited Hawkstone beer. Unlimited Hawkstone cider. For every guest at the reception. That detail matters more than it first appears. Because the beer was made on the farm where Kaleb has worked for the last 5 years. And it was served at the wedding of the man who helped make that farm famous. That is not branding. That is a closed loop. It is not just a farm. It is a machine. And the wedding showed exactly how that machine works. The room was full of people tied to the same world. The farm, the show, the business, the family. All of it sitting in one place, watching one of the central characters step into a new life. And that is where the story gets bigger. Because 3 weeks earlier, Jeremy Clarkson had told viewers on national television that he had been diagnosed with aggressive prostate cancer. He said it had been caught early. He said he would be out of action for a while. And there he was anyway. Still recovering from surgery. Still at the reception. Still there for Kaleb. That was the moment the story stopped being about a TV personality turning up to a wedding. It became something much more human. Clarkson thought he was attending a friend's wedding. He was also showing the world exactly how real this relationship had become. The public started with a joke. A rich man and a young farmer. A celebrity and a farm manager. A television setup. That was the mistake. Kaleb Cooper wasn't the side character. He was becoming the character. The most valuable unscripted presence in the whole show. And nobody cast him. He was already there. Now, here is the part that changes everything. Kaleb and Tia have been together for a decade. They were childhood sweethearts. They grew up in the same corner of Oxfordshire. They were building a life long before the cameras arrived. That matters. Because the wedding was not the beginning of their story. It was the proof that the story survived everything else. Oscar was born in March 2021. Willa came in 2023. Ashton was born last August. Kaleb was harvesting a field when Ashton's arrival came up. He told Tia to hang on until he had finished the row. Clarkson later wrote about it in his column. He called Kaleb the boy wonder, and the line that stayed with people was simple. How farmerish is that? It was, and it still is. Kaleb proposed to Tia on Christmas Day in 2022. 3 children first, then the proposal, then the wedding. That order tells you almost everything about him. Life first, image second, work always. Now let's step back, because this is where the easy version of the story falls apart. People see the McLaren, they see the wedding, they see the TV fame. But the real story started much earlier. Kaleb began with contracting work. He delivered veg boxes. He worked long hours across Oxfordshire. At the beginning, the money was so thin it barely covered fuel. That is the kind of start people love to romanticize after the fact. At the time, it was just hard work. And that is why his rise feels different. It was not built on one lucky break. It was built on being useful, being visible, and being ready when the opportunity arrived. The failure is the product, not in a tragic sense, in the most British farming sense possible. The hard years became the proof. The low-paying jobs became the foundation. The ordinary life became the thing people later wanted to watch. That is the real counterintuitive truth here. The world thought Clarkson's farm was about Clarkson. It never really was. It was about everyone around him who made the whole thing work. Kaleb especially. And that is why his wedding mattered. Because it showed how completely the story had expanded beyond the original premise. There was still the farm. There was still the work. There was still the media attention. But now there was also a family, a business, a brand, a future. Kaleb's wider commercial rise has been building in the background too. The production company, the books, the contracting work, the solo momentum, the fact that he is no longer just a name inside someone else's story. He is becoming a story of his own. And that is what most people missed. They saw the television character. They did not fully see the operating system behind him. Stand back and look at the full picture. A boy from Chipping Norton grew up on the same roads he still drives today. He built a life in the same county where he was born. He married the woman he had been with since his teenage years. He drove to the wedding in a 25,000-pound McLaren with his son beside him. His best mate brought the beer. His family filled the room. His boss was in the reception recovering from cancer surgery. And all of it happened minutes from the farm that made the whole story possible. It is not a coincidence. It is a flywheel. The farm became the film set. The film set became the business. The business became the life. And the life became the thing people could not stop watching. That is why the image worked. Not because it was flashy, because it was complete. This was never just a wedding.